What if the most dangerous thing in the modern world is not a weapon, not a virus, but a simple truth? Not truth in the abstract, but truth that strikes at the heart of how power maintains itself. In our age, power no longer rules only by law or by force, it rules by narrative. And truth, when it surfaces, can puncture that narrative in an instant. Yet, in a postmodern world, the danger is magnified, because the very idea of truth itself is under suspicion. So, before we pull back the curtain, take a moment to support our work with a like and subscribe, but only if you are ready to explore the truths hidden in plain sight. Invite viewers to post their reflections in the comments. Now, let's begin our descent into the core of the issue. The ancients knew this power well. Socrates was executed not for treason, but for corrupting the youth with inconvenient questions. Questions that revealed contradictions in the democratic state's values. He embodied parrhesia, the act of speaking truth to power regardless of consequence. In ancient Athens, where democracy was both celebrated and fragile, this was a high-stakes game. Socrates understood that truth was not merely a private possession, it was a public act, a destabilizing force that could erode the authority of those who feared it. Today, we like to think we are beyond such acts of suppression, but in reality, the mechanics have simply changed form. In the postmodern world, power often doesn't need to silence truth outright. It only needs to bury it under competing truths, to dilute it in a sea of narratives until it becomes indistinguishable from opinion. This shift does not make truth less dangerous, it makes it radioactive. When someone insists on an objective truth in an era that prizes subjectivity, they are no longer merely disagreeing, they are attacking the very logic of the age. Historically, the Catholic Church's struggle with Galileo offers a vivid mirror. Galileo's assertion that the earth revolved around the sun did not merely challenge theological doctrine, it threatened the order of the universe as it was understood by those in control. His telescope was not just an instrument of science, it was a weapon against the architecture of power. Visually, this could be shown as a single bright star piercing the vast darkness, a light so sharp it fractures the sky itself. In the present, whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and truth-telling artists face similar dynamics. The threat they pose isn't simply the exposure of a fact, it's the exposure of a contradiction between what is said and what is real. And once that contradiction is visible, the authority that depends on belief begins to crumble. The danger, then, is twofold. For those in power, truth is dangerous because it erodes control. For those who speak it, truth is dangerous because it invites retaliation, not only from the powerful, but from the society that benefits from the illusion. In a postmodern context, where skepticism toward grand narratives reigns supreme, truth does not just disrupt systems, it disrupts the cultural immune system itself, the one built to filter reality into manageable, comforting stories. And this brings us to a deeper paradox. The more a society insists that truth is a matter of perspective, the more violently it reacts when someone presents a truth that cannot be relativized. That's when truth ceases to be an intellectual exercise and becomes a force of existential threat. This is the battleground on which our world now stands. To understand why truth feels like a live wire in today's culture, we must examine the philosophical knife edge of relativism, the very lens through which modern societies decide what can and cannot be believed. If the modern era framed truth as a beacon, the postmodern era reframes it as a question mark. At the core of postmodern thought lies relativism, the belief that truth is not an objective constant, but a construct shaped by culture, language, and power. On the surface, relativism appears liberating. It dissolves rigid hierarchies of knowledge, challenges oppressive dogmas, and exposes the biases embedded in so-called universal truth. But the same blade that cuts down tyranny can just as easily sever the rope that holds a society together. Relativism's philosophical foundation can be traced to thinkers like Michel Foucault and Jean-François Lyotard. Foucault, in particular, revealed how truth is often nothing more than the expression of a dominant discourse, the worldview of those who hold power. He dismantled the myth that truth is neutral, showing instead that knowledge and power are intertwined, each shaping and legitimizing the other. Lyotard added that in the postmodern condition, grand narratives, those sweeping stories that give coherence to history and culture, lose their credibility. In their place, we get fragmented mini-narratives, each valid in its own context, but unable to claim universal authority. At first, this sounds like a recipe for freedom. Without grand narratives, there is no single ideology dictating reality. But here lies the danger. Without shared reference points, truth becomes negotiable, not in the sense of being debated toward consensus, but in the sense of being endlessly deferred. Visually, imagine a map where every compass needle spins wildly, and no direction is stable for more than a moment. This instability has profound consequences. In a world where no truth claim is inherently more valid than another, the loudest voice, not the most accurate, often prevails. Social media platforms have weaponized this principle, amplifying engagement-driven narratives over fact-based discourse. Truth is not crushed by censorship, it is drowned in noise. And when every truth is just another perspective, the public loses not only the ability to agree on what is real, but even the desire to try. History offers us a chilling parallel. During the late Roman Empire, political and social fragmentation eroded the unifying myths that once bound citizens together. Competing loyalties to regional leaders, religious sects, and private interests meant that no shared vision of the empire remained. When truth is entirely relative, it becomes impossible to rally people toward a common purpose, leaving a vacuum easily filled by opportunists and demagogues. In the contemporary world, this vacuum is fertile ground for manufactured realities. Corporations, political campaigns, and even grassroots movements can construct their own micro-realities, self-contained worlds with their own facts, histories, and moral codes. Once inside, adherents find it almost impossible to communicate meaningfully with outsiders. The walls of these worlds are not physical. They are cognitive, reinforced by algorithms and confirmation bias. And yet, relativism is not inherently evil. It serves an essential role in dismantling oppressive orthodoxies and highlighting perspectives long ignored. The problem is that without a counterbalance, it invites chaos. The same relativism that undermines tyranny also undermines trust, turning the search for truth into an endless hall of mirrors. Thus, the double-edged nature of relativism reveals itself. It can protect individuals from the suffocating grip of dogma, but it can also strip away the possibility of collective truth. In this sense, the postmodern world is like a ship where each passenger navigates by their own private star. Freedom exists, but so does the certainty of drifting apart. And when a society begins to drift without a shared horizon, the people inevitably face a choice: seek the discomfort of a unifying truth, or surrender to the seduction of narratives that soothe rather than challenge. That seduction, the choice of comfort over truth, is the next step in our descent. When truth becomes optional, comfort becomes king. The human mind, evolved for survival rather than enlightenment, is predisposed to seek what soothes over what disturbs. In a world where relativism reigns, the most palatable narrative often eclipses the most accurate one, not because people are incapable of handling reality, but because reality, when stripped of illusions, is rarely flattering. Friedrich Nietzsche foresaw this tension. His notion of the will to power was not merely about domination, it was about the deep, often unconscious drive to shape the world in ways that affirm our values and protect our sense of meaning. In Nietzsche's eyes, truth was not always a virtue. Sometimes it was a burden. "We have art," he wrote, "in order not to perish from the truth." In our era, the art that shields us from truth is not necessarily beauty. It's the carefully crafted narrative, the curated feed, the ideological bubble that promises clarity without complexity. Visually, this could appear as a warm-lit room filled with familiar objects, with a locked door outside which a raging storm howls unheard. Throughout history, leaders have understood that people crave stability more than they crave truth. The bread and circuses of the Roman Empire did not merely distract citizens. They offered a reality in which hardship was temporarily suspended. In the same way, modern societies offer psychological bread and circuses, entertainment, consumerism, and the constant hum of digital stimulation. These serve as both anesthetic and alternative reality, cushioning the mind from the raw, unfiltered nature of the world. The danger here is not just individual complacency. It is the societal architecture that forms around this preference for comfort. Institutions, from governments to corporations, learn quickly that presenting a palatable story is more effective than presenting a correct one. A leader who says, "Everything will be fine," is rewarded with trust, even when the facts suggest otherwise. In turn, the public becomes complicit, accepting the illusion because it spares them the cognitive labor of confronting uncomfortable realities. The cost of this mutual pact is subtle, but immense. Over time, the muscles needed to grapple with hard truths atrophy. The ability to hold two contradictory ideas in tension, a hallmark of mature thought, weakens. And when a real crisis comes, the collective psyche is ill-prepared to deal with it honestly. We see this in the way societies react to existential threats such as climate change. The truth is available, measurable, and urgent, yet narratives that promise minimal disruption gain more traction than those demanding painful change. Nietzsche's insight here cuts sharply. If truth threatens the narratives that give us strength, we will choose the narrative every time. This is why the truth-teller in a postmodern world is not merely inconvenient. They are dangerous. They are the one willing to open the locked door and let the storm inside. And yet, even this preference for comfort is not the final transformation truth undergoes in the postmodern condition. There is another, more insidious stage, one where truth is not merely replaced by comforting stories, but is actively reshaped by the systems that control what we see and hear. In the age of algorithmic mediation, the gatekeepers are no longer solely human. And the comfort they offer is not random, it is engineered. To understand this final evolution, we must step into the architecture of the digital world, where the logic of truth itself is rewritten line by line in code. In the past, truth had to pass through human gatekeepers, editors, publishers, political authorities, each with biases and agendas, but at least visible in their human imperfection. In the present, that gatekeeping has been absorbed into vast, invisible systems of algorithmic control. The algorithms that govern search engines, social media feeds, and recommendation systems are not neutral pipelines. They are active curators of reality, shaping what billions of people perceive as true by amplifying certain narratives and burying others. This shift represents a new philosophical battlefield. The ancient struggle between truth and power now plays out not only in parliaments and courts, but in the silent architecture of code. Marshall McLuhan's observation that the medium is the message takes on an ominous twist. In the algorithmic age, the medium does not merely shape the message, it selects it. Visually, imagine a massive unseen hand rearranging a library, placing certain books at eye level while locking others in the basement. The danger lies in the seamlessness of the process. Unlike the propaganda machines of the 20th century, which were overt and often crude, algorithmic influence operates under the guise of personalization and convenience. We are told that what we see is tailored to our preferences, but those preferences are themselves shaped by what we have already been shown. This creates a closed feedback loop in which reality narrows to match our existing beliefs, and contradictory truths vanish from sight. Historically, the printing press broke the monopoly of knowledge held by the medieval church, unleashing a flood of competing ideas. But in the algorithmic age, the flood is not chaotic, it is filtered. The gate is still there, it is simply invisible, and it is designed to maximize engagement, not enlightenment. Truth competes in an arena where virality, not veracity, determines survival. This environment favors the spectacular over the substantial. A complex, nuanced truth may be accurate, but if it cannot compete with the emotional punch of a half-truth packaged for clicks, it will sink. This is not simply a distortion of public discourse, it is a rewriting of the evolutionary rules of ideas. Just as nature selects for traits that enhance survival, algorithms select for narratives that enhance shareability. Over time, even truth-tellers unconsciously adjust their message to fit the algorithm's reward system, compromising content to reach an audience at all. And here lies the quiet tragedy. Truth in the algorithmic age is not only censored, it is engineered into compliance. We speak less about uncomfortable realities, not because we fear prison, as Galileo did, but because we fear invisibility. The digital marketplace of ideas is not a free bazaar. It is a walled garden where the gardeners are unseen and their priorities are profit and control. In such a system, the danger of truth becomes existential for the individual who dares to speak it plainly. Not only can they be deplatformed or shadow banned, but their work can be made algorithmically invisible, present yet unseen, existing in a reality parallel to the mainstream. This silent erasure is in many ways more dangerous than open censorship. The public does not rally against an injustice it cannot see. A voice silenced by force can inspire rebellion. A voice buried by code simply disappears from the collective mind. Thus, the postmodern world introduces a paradox Galileo could not have imagined. We have more access to information than ever before, yet less exposure to truths that challenge us. And those who insist on breaking through this digital veil face a final test: the personal cost of carrying truth in a society that may not want it. That cost is where our journey now takes us. To speak an unwelcome truth in a postmodern world is to step willingly into a crucible. The crucible is not always dramatic. It does not always involve prison cells or exile. More often, it is a slow erosion, loss of reputation, social ostracism, financial ruin, the quiet withdrawal of allies. The danger is not that the truth will kill you instantly, but that it will starve you of the lifelines that make survival possible. Historically, we see this pattern in figures as diverse as Giordano Bruno, whose cosmological ideas defied the church, and dissidents in authoritarian regimes who faced exile or worse. In every age, the penalty for truth-telling is calibrated to the tools of the time. In our era, those tools are social and psychological. To speak the wrong truth is to become a pariah, not just in political spheres, but in professional, familial, and digital spaces. Philosophically, this recalls Immanuel Kant's insistence on sapere aude, dare to know. Enlightenment for Kant was the courage to use one's own understanding without the guidance of another. But in a society that prizes comfort and relativism, daring to know often requires daring to stand alone. Visually, this could be shown as a lone figure on a narrow bridge over a chasm, holding a lantern against a storm. A personal cost is compounded by the fact that, in the postmodern condition, truth-tellers are not battling a single monolithic opponent. Instead, they face countless micro-worlds, each with its own beliefs and narratives. To challenge one is to risk exile from that world. To challenge many is to risk exile from all. And yet, without such voices, society drifts further into a landscape where what is profitable to believe is indistinguishable from what is true. This is why the truth-teller, though dangerous to the structures of power, is equally endangered by them. The whistleblower loses their career. The investigative journalist is harassed into silence. The academic is stripped of grants or platforms. The cost is not only professional, it is existential. In a fragmented reality, truth can isolate you so completely that your voice echoes only to yourself. And yet, there is a strange paradox here. It is precisely the willingness to pay this cost that gives truth its enduring power. From Socrates to dissidents of the digital age, the willingness to face loss for the sake of truth has been the mark of those who alter the course of history, even if their contemporaries cannot, or will not, acknowledge it. In the postmodern world, where truths compete with comforting illusions and algorithmically engineered narratives, speaking truth is an act of rebellion against the gravitational pull of conformity. It is the insistence that reality, however fractured, still matters. And it is this insistence that forces society, however reluctantly, to confront its own contradictions. The danger of truth in a postmodern world is not simply that it upsets the powerful. It is that it exposes the quiet pact between power and the public, the unspoken agreement to trade reality for comfort, clarity for convenience. Truth is dangerous because it is a mirror, and most would rather look at a painting of themselves than their true reflection. Relativism, comfort, and algorithmic mediation form the walls of a vast, invisible labyrinth. The truth-teller moves through it with a torch, knowing that each flicker of light will provoke the shadows to close in. Some will follow that light. Most will turn away. And yet, history shows that the light persists. Societies can drown it, bury it, distort it, but they cannot unmake it. The question is not whether truth will survive. It always does, in some hidden corner. The question is whether we will have the courage to meet it when it steps into the open. So, ask yourself, not tomorrow, but now, if the truth came to you, stripped of all comfort, would you embrace it or turn away?